So, yeah, in fact, what we're going to be covering today with Marcus is the 7 key mindsets of successful people. I was really interested to see the phrase key mindset, 7 key mindsets, because normally I think of a mindset as being 1, not 7. And actually, Marcus, we'll get into the meat of this in a second, but why 7 key mindsets, not 1?
I like the number 7.
Okay.
We have mindset is everything, as you quite rightfully identify. However, I think we have different mindsets and thought processes in different areas. And when over my years of being coached and trained and been able to retrain my brain and then do it with other people, I found there were kind of 7 key elements that if you looked at all of those, then brought them all together, you could essentially have a magnificent mindset more of the time than you otherwise might. And I just, for me, found breaking it down into 7 little bits helps you keep the uber mindset in better shape more often.
Lovely. Thank you. We'll come back onto that in just a moment. So at least we know the answer to that question now. So in terms of just a little bit of introduction generally to what we specialize, or business growth specializes in, for those of you who are regular to us, you'll know that we are very passionate in working with directors and leaders of business in the UK, whether it's a company of 1 or a company of 1,000. In reality, when you're a CEO or a director of a company, it can be a very, very lonely place. It's really important to have good people around you who are there to cover your back and support you in what you're doing and make it with decisions. And we're focused around, as the name suggests, around business growth. And obviously, everything's built on solid roots or solid foundations. If you enjoy these sessions, do set a reminder for yourself, and also do feel free to like and share the page with your network. Obviously, the more interaction that you give us, it's fantastic. Marcus loves it as well, and we certainly do. And at the end of the day, we all feed off the energy of each other. So in the chat, do share what you're really passionate about. And I'm not talking about so much from a business context here today. I'm more talking about you personally, what you're really passionate about, and also why you do it. Obviously, the why behind it is really important. And do be bold with the questions. And obviously, if someone raises a particularly good question today, we might just give you the opportunity, if you wish to do so, to put yourself forward. And if you've got a bit of time, we might even bring you into the green room and bring you into the conversation as well. So do feel you can reach out. A little bit of background about myself. I founded Business Growth Bureau about 7 years ago. I passionately love working with people. And also what I really like to focus on is the importance of circular relationships. So what I mean by that is look at all your stakeholders, and I class suppliers as stakeholders just like everyone else. So prospects, clients, partners, associates, employees, and of course your own management team. Think of all those as being stakeholders in your business, because if you end up by making everyone feel really good about that relationship, of course, people themselves actually want to be associated with what you're doing the other way around, and they're vested in your success and everything else that goes with it. And Muriel Gibbons, bless you. We've known each other about 14 years, haven't we, Muriel?
Yeah, 14 or a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, and Muriel just makes sure behind the scenes everything works and happens. And also, many of you who are perhaps clients of ours as well will know Muriel very well for what she's really passionate and what she does. In terms of our core specialisms, it really is about helping people to bring their sales forward, amplify their brand, get their time back. And we offer a series of solutions about optimizing branding, marketing, and to do with sales and client acquisition. If you get all these 6 cogs working properly in sync, you're building a very, very strong organization, and you'll also get lots of people wanting to work with you and the other way around. Now, very importantly, we want to come to Marcus now. That's the really important bit. And Marcus, we're having a bit of a conversation today just before we went live today about your little bit of a personal journey. I'd love to hear a little bit about your personal journey and how that then got you into your specialism, which you provide now. So would you be okay just to share that? And we'll come back to the topics in just a moment, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I'll try and give you a very potted history. I have a unique and refreshingly challenging childhood. where I tell stories about stuff that happened on the way, and I normally tell them about 3 boys and then bring them all together, because the first story is about a boy who was blown up twice by the time he was 7. The second time because he was left home alone and his mother was reported to the NSPCC. The second story I tell about an alcoholic, abusive mother who one day while washing up turned and threw a carving knife at her son, which went doing in the door behind, almost cartoon-esque. And then I tell a third story about this boy who never knew his father. And that was all cool and absolutely fine, because what you don't know, you've almost never missed. At the age of 16, he got a job in an upmarket Curry's, which is an electrical store for people from around the world that sells videos, TVs, hi-fi. Had a great time. He made friends with his sort of manager, who was 2 or 3 years older, who had real challenges around stress because he never spoke about his mother. It was a taboo subject. So these 2 guys got on. One didn't know his father, one didn't know the mother, and they got this great friendship until the boy, number 3, was 18 and was given some newspaper cuttings about a horrendous event where sadly the father had run away with a local pub's landlord owner's wife. They'd gone up the motorway, she was killed. This does get motivational, promise you. But there was this awful event, and by some weird twist of fate, my father turned out to be the guy who, in this awful accident, had killed this man's mother. How we came together over sort of time and space. So you've got this ridiculous sort of childhood. That's just a snapshot of it. So the first takeaway is I was fine, despite all those challenges, despite being blown up, despite the knives and the alcoholic abuse, despite all that, I was kind of all right, because it's all I ever knew. Until I was 18, when a load of very well-meaning counsellors and people got involved because they discovered what was going on, and they all said, "Oh, you must feel terrible, you must feel abused, you must feel awful." I'm going, "Well, actually, I'm all right, thank you very much. It's a bit weird, but hey, I'll roll with it." No, you must feel terrible, you must feel betrayed, you must feel abused. And eventually I took that mantle on and spent 10 years of my life walking around with this anger and this frustration because of the awful treatment I'd had, and told myself what I now call poor me stories. And it stressed me so badly that by the time I was knocking on the door of 30, I was given 2 years to live because I was so stressed inside. And that was my catalyst. I had an amazingly forward-thinking doctor who inspired me to learn about stress. And that's when I started learning about how the mind worked, and a whole new world was opened up of possibility, and I was able to change how I felt. So that's kind of why I do what I do. Forgive me for paraphrasing, but I know we're short on time.
No, that's I'll be honest, I mean, that's, first of all, that's really moving, and the analogy with the 3 boys or 3 people there, I mean, is incredibly powerful. Obviously you had touched on this a bit earlier on this afternoon, and I was blown away. I hadn't really realised that actually we're talking quite about the same person here. I also, at school, am I correct in saying you had a bit of a hard time at school, and that did it take away a lot of your confidence at the time? And
absolutely. I was a real scared child. I mean, people see me now. If I'm not smiling, I look across between either a bank robber or a bouncer. This big guy. I can tell you it was very different when I was younger. I'm neither of those things, by the way. Just to clarify. I was never in a school for longer than 2 years, and moved from Northern Ireland where the bombing was going on. So I was always the new kid, and I used to get beaten up regularly. It was just a fact of being, in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. Had my confidence. I was just frightened a lot of the time, and to the point where I was so terrified of public speaking, for example. I think if I asked you all to put your hand up who's a bit concerned about public speaking, it's a normal, natural fear for most of us. But I was kind of ridiculed at school because I had to go once. It went a bit wrong, but it was the teacher. As I walked out to the front of the class, I pulled up my trousers. I just hitched up my belt. And for some reason, the teacher went, "What's wrong, Thomlinson? Are you worried your trousers are going to fall down?" And when you're 13, that's not great. And you had all the kids going, "Ha, your trousers are going to fall down." And even the teacher was laughing at me. So you can imagine how I was just stood there shaking, thinking, "Oh, God, I want a hole to open up and swallow me up." So I was petrified of public speaking most of my life. I love it now. I absolutely love it. I'll do it all day long. And it's that transition of what's going on in here that really, that's my passion. It just fires me up to say, if I can do it, anyone can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because we're having a discussion, again, a bit earlier on today before we came on air, as it were. And fair enough, I had not the same background as you had, not at all, because that'd be demeaning what you're saying. But certainly at school, being a short-assed 16-year-old at the time, and then switching from the private school system to the state system, I was certainly the butt of every joke. So, and of course, it does, after everyone keeps on telling you that you're just useless, you can actually start to believe it. So it can be very moving. And one of the schools I went to, which actually was a Catholic boarding school, it turned out that one of the monks there had been abusing children himself. So, in fact, actually, just recently, there's been quite a bit. There's a documentary on TV about it, but I won't mention the school for, in fairness, out of respect to everyone concerned, because obviously that's just one bad person out of the whole lot. But of course, if you had been a victim of that monk, at that time, that was clearly a very bad experience for many boys who were actually in that school.
Yeah.
Interesting enough, obviously the inner strength with you, Marcus. I mean, obviously we've only really brushing over this, aren't we? But the inner strength that you found from that really helped you to find who you are today, isn't it? In terms of, if you hadn't had these experiences, would you say that you would have been gifted to the same extent to want to help people the way you are now?
It's about flipping the experience to be a positive rather than negative.
Yeah. Right.
I now go, wow, how lucky was I to have this rather bizarre childhood, because I do talks. It's my career, and I'm able to hopefully inspire other people. And that's the key to all this. It's, the whole stress thing and what happens to us, as you just said, what was happening to you. If you hear it often enough, you kind of, it goes from your conscious into your subconscious, and you buy into it. You believe that you are the whatever it is. And being able to flip that, when I started to understand how the mind worked after some years of study, I was kind of, wow, I've got a choice. I can make this good. So that's the liberator. I didn't have the inner strength then. So I'll take, a lot of it is by reading and support from other people that enable me to see it differently, to then get the strength. So for those people who think, oh, well, he was lucky, or did he have that inner strength? Not really. I learned it. I had to learn it and have good people around me, which now enables me to have the real inner strength to be a 90% of the time positive, genuinely full of beans person.
Yeah, great. And it's fantastic the way you've been to come through that. And obviously we're going to get down to the meat of this in just a second. I just want to welcome a few people I've got a lovely person called Shiding here. Could you just actually, if you're happy to do so, of course, just tell us who you are? That'd be lovely to figure that one out. Thomas, I somehow knew you were going to be joining us today. I think I saw something on Facebook a bit earlier on. And of course, I think you were sharing something about the cafes are starting to open up in Cyprus as well. So really interesting. Renato, welcome. And Renato is in the process of transitioning from a very large telecom communications company in the UK into private practice in the next year or two, which is really interesting. Ewan, nice to see you today. I think you might be the first time here, I'm not sure. So you're interested about intrinsic motivation. That's an interesting word. You'll have to tell us what you mean by that. Be really interested to know. And Renato, obviously, you talk about a lot about stress coming from years ago, and obviously you talk about Aikido. Can't pronounce that properly. And but obviously the whole thing around energy. What I'd be really interested to know, actually, and do interact today, because I know I'd certainly love that. Mira would, and Marcus, I'm sure, would as well. Is if you've had some particular experiences in the past, I'd be really interested to know, if you're happy to share, what possibly those experiences might have been, and how's that helped to define you to who you are today. If you just happy to share that in the chat, and be really interested to see that. And what we'll do is at different points we'll pick out some of these conversations and go from there. So right, so coming back to you, Marcus, again, and in terms of today's topic, what Marcus planned to very kindly share today is these whole points around how to have more influence over your future, how to feel less stressed, how to love yourself and your business, how to set more meaningful goals, and how to create a vision that inspires you, and how to get things done, and how to radiate confidence in yourself and your clients. So there are actually 7 really big topics, and I'm sure, Marcus, you could talk about all these particular points for hours. And in fact, as I know that obviously is a large part of your sort of experience and background that you share. So what would be really good is if we could perhaps drill down on some of these, if that's okay. And so if we start off with this whole a part around having more influence over your future, how's that helped to define who you are today and into your future? How do you feel that's going to impact things for you?
So the concept that I read about time and time again, and when I was being coached myself, was essentially boils down to we are what we think about the most. And I didn't fully understand at the moment because, you know, sometimes these phrases can sound a bit woo. But the more I studied it, essentially what we have in our dominant thoughts starts in our conscious mindset, or conscious brain, should I say, and then it kind of permeates into our subconscious and then starts to enable us to take real world actions based on that process flow. So in real simple terms is if you're thinking about negative stuff, what you can't do, what we can't achieve on a regular basis, your brain kind of goes, I hear you, I can tell that's what you want, no problem, I'm going to help you make sure you don't achieve. And the more you repeat it, the more it's going to sit in your subconscious. And I'm actually going to give you opportunities in the world to make as much mess of things as possible. Alternatively, having influence over the future is saying, well, hang on, no, what I want out of life or for my business or whatever it is are these things. So have a mini plan and say that every day, as often as you can, this is the positive outcome I want. This is the how I want to feel, healthy, well, focused, energetic, and use this in your conscious mind as often and as frequently as possible. And that starts to permeate into your subconscious mind and then starts to give you real world opportunities for you to manifest that in your personal and professional life. And it only works. I know it's a big claim, but I've worked with so many successful people. They all adopt this process. What you think about the most is what manifests in your life in its simplest form.
Right. And that's really interesting, isn't it? Because also I think some of that also comes round to what we all watch on TV as well, doesn't it? Because in reality, it's very easy to get hooked on perhaps it's on binge watch, perhaps series on Netflix and everything else that goes with it. And then we actually end up by becoming the same denominator as everyone else, rather than be able to perhaps rise above it and actually focus on developing ourselves, doesn't it? And it's interesting. I had a conversation with our son earlier on today, who's 24, and he's very much driven by a sense of purpose and wants to make a real difference in this world. Working for a large corporate, it is actually a very good organisation, but he's actually feels he wants to perhaps have create a bigger difference, have a bigger impact. But one of the things that we talk about there is that in effect you can actually you can create your own future. And actually what you can possibly look to do as well is how you can talk about the future as if it's in the present. And so we had a bit of a debate around that, interesting enough. What is your thought around that thinking is my interest?
That's the vision mindset. Funny enough, that's one of the mindset. It's all about that. And it's one of the most powerful techniques, I believe, because making in the present kind of gets your brain to say, oh, I've got to catch up with this and start manifesting real world actions to catch up. So an example of this, one of my favorite examples is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Back in 1976, he'd just become Mr. Universe. He was a big, muscly guy, as we all know him. He had an even stronger, thicker kind of Austrian accent then, and he was being interviewed by a New York Times journalist. And he just had a go at making his first ever film. It's called Stay Hungry. I don't suggest you look for it. Even he says it wasn't his finest work. Anyway, so the interviewer's chatting away to him, and he sees Mr. Schwarzenegger then as a bit of a meathead, a bit muscly bloke, I'm not really sure what you're going to do. He said, okay, Mr. Schwarzenegger, what's next? And he said, I'm going to be one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. Now, the journalist had to almost stifle a laugh. He didn't want to be rude because he thought, I'm really sorry. I've seen your acting. It's not great. Your communication skills aren't the best I've ever heard. But he stays a professional. Says, okay, Arnie, how are you going to do that? And Arnie looked him in the eye and he said, I'm going to do exactly what I did to become the world's greatest bodybuilder. I'm going to create a picture in my mind of how I look, how I stand, how I feel, how other people see me. And I'm going to do everything in my power every day to live into that future version of myself. And that's kind of what it's all about. We know the outcome of that. A very unlikely gentleman became one of the highest grossing actors in Hollywood. And this is a process that's repeated time and time again. If time allowed, there are so many ways that you create this future version of you, and then your brain gets the message that, oh, that's where you want to be, is it? Okay, well, what can we do? What do we need to change? How can I help? And the brain almost becomes this inner version of you to rearrange your life, your events, and what's out there to get you, if you believe in it strongly enough and feel it powerfully. So, yeah, the vision mindset is all about that.
And he became a state mayor? He also the whole of California, didn't he?
Yeah.
Is he still in that role now? I can't remember.
No idea.
But he suddenly had a few run-ins with Trump, I believe, as well, from what I recall. But
I don't think they'll be going to each other's houses for Christmas.
So it's quite funny from someone who actually, took and then basically recreated himself and then recreated himself again. It's quite amazing, isn't it, what you can actually achieve. And you talk a lot about stress as well. I mean, stress is a very big topic in itself, isn't it? And we can all be very guilty of burnout. And also, people have had to make very big changes over the last year or so, from perhaps being in an office environment or in a warehouse or whatever it may be, to actually perhaps spending a lot of time at home, and big adjustments, perhaps big pressures on the family as well, possibly a little bit of sense of isolation, and perhaps a real sense of feeling overworked because perhaps there are a lot of pressures being applied from up top, as it were, and people having to deal with that. So how can you feel less stressed when there's perhaps everything around you is perhaps seeming to work against you?
The first thing that helped me, and funny enough, you nicely segued into the second mindset, the calm mindset, is all about helping people understand, then manage stress. Because I didn't know what it was. I'm embarrassed to say that back in the day when I was diagnosed as having critical stress, I thought it was for time wasters, for people who had an excuse. They didn't want to do, to work hard. And what I began to learn was how the body accidentally poisons itself if we don't use what it does for us when we feel stressed. So very briefly, most of you will maybe have heard of fight or flight, and that's the inner program we have to protect ourselves when we're under attack. It started with, saber-toothed tigers or whatever, hundreds of thousands of years ago. And what happens is that the second you get that, I'm going to stand there and fight the thing, whatever it is, or take flight, there is a middle one called freeze, but we'll put that to one side for now. If you do either of those things, when you get the butterflies in your stomach, great, because it dissipates all of the chemicals that are put into your system to enable you to do it. What most people don't know is that if you don't fight or flight, which most of us, of course, don't, because it's not these days when we get those butterflies, it's usually something you're not going to do that with, that those chemicals turn into a poison. So our immune system has to start trying to get rid of the poison, which is why we get ill more often with stress, because it puts our whole immune system, and I'm paraphrasing to any doctors out there, I'm paraphrasing massively, but it's to emphasize a point. But that's the first thing that I didn't know. And the second thing was the phrase, stress is not what happens to us, it's our reaction to what happens to us, or even better, our response to what happens to us. And our response is something that we can control. And that's the other thing, that 100% of my stress and your stress, anyone watching this, you like a bit of this and not like a bit of it. First thing is 100% of your stress is your fault. That's pretty in your face. It's absolutely your fault. But the great news is 100% of your stress is your fault. So you can change it. You can do something about it.
Yeah.
So those two bits of knowledge were, I'll be honest, I kicked back and said, how dare you? The train being late's not my fault. My boss being an idiot's not my fault. My fallout with my husband, wife, or whoever is not my fault. How dare you? No, none of those things are, but how you react to it is 100% your choice. Whether you take on the anger and go, or you go, okay, there's other ways to deal with this. And that's the second phase of it, understanding much about how stress impacts your mind and body is the beginning. Then there's a whole load of techniques you can bring in very quickly to be able to manage and be less stressed. Up to 90% of the time. It's phenomenal what you can do. So whether it's one of my courses, Rupert's, anyone out there, learn as much as you can about stress first, then just put in a whole load of techniques and use them. Please use them, because people learn the techniques, do it for a week and then don't bother.
Yeah.
And they're still stressed. So yeah.
I think as well, a lot of this is also, well, I think you've sort of said this actually, but it is really not allowing stress to control you as well, isn't it? And also, I think when we've all perhaps got sort of personal challenges as well, an analogy I would tend to give, I'm sure you probably told this story many times, you're an expert in this, I'm not. But, I've found if you sometimes get things which seem to overwhelm you or get you really stressed out, is almost to deal with those things. You obviously have got to deal with them. You can't necessarily always put them to one side, but what you can do is deal with them, then put those in a box, put the lid on the box and put the box to one side. And then you focus on what needs to be done in life to move things forward. And then perhaps only allow yourself to return back to that box and open the lid to deal with things perhaps a few days or a few hours later, whatever's relevant, or a few weeks later if necessary, deal with it and then go back to things. So you have found very effective ways of managing, I guess, that stress as well. And it was something that's also really caught my eye the other day. In fact, without mentioning that dreaded C word that we're all sort of living within at the moment. But so the point I think was being made was that if we can find ways of actually managing stress, then the positive benefit of that is that we actually are less likely to get sick. And also, if you took the vaccines that are going around at the moment, which thank God we've got a reasonable supply of them, that actually the vaccines are much more likely to be effective. Because otherwise you're not giving the immune system the chance to respond to what you've been gifted with through a vaccination. There's huge benefits to being able to try and deal with this in a properly managed way, isn't there? So, and be able to try and to control those emotions and release them where appropriate. But,
three quick things which I think, one thing and two techniques which you can all start using today. The first thing is stress is responsible for 100% of illness. Not my words. If you look into the medical profession, we've known this for 2,000 years. The reason it's called dis-ease, going back to the time of Socrates, they knew that malady and malaise, dis-ease, was caused by the stress on the body actually triggering all sorts of cells to go wrong, essentially, which can ultimately cause headaches, aches and pains, and ultimately things like cancers and heart attacks. It all starts with stress. Pretty much every illness. Again, do your research on that. So that is fascinating, which should be a great motivator to think, well, let me learn more about it so I can change it. Two really powerful techniques that I use and have learned is that when we want to respond differently, we need a fresh set of thinking so we don't become stressed in the moment. The first thing is, I don't know if you know, but we've all got a button here and a button here on our temples. And if we press that, and when we have a negative thought or a stressful thought and say the words, delete that program, preferably out loud if it's appropriate, it feels a bit silly, which is good, but just very quick, delete that program. And the first few days, you get sore temples because you'll be pressing the button a lot. Just do that as often as you possibly can. Whenever there are negative thoughts, delete that program, delete that program. I mean, absolutely, just kick the bejeebers out of it. And if you're in a meeting and you feel stressed, nobody knows what you're doing. You just go.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's really good.
That's the first thing, is to start disrupting the way you think, to start responding rather than reacting. So one is delete the negative thing, and then immediately replace it with a better set of instructions to your brain as to how you feel. So if it's someone you work with who angers you whenever you talk to them, your boss, for example, and you want to say, actually, my boss has all sorts of contributions that I haven't yet discovered. Could be a thing you could say to yourself. So your boss is being unpleasant, delete that program. There's all sorts of things I've not discovered about my boss yet. Because it's better than the alternative, because the more cross you get, the more you'll be affected by it. If you switch it into something over which you have power and go, I'm going to own this, I'm going to change the way I'm thinking. So delete the program, replace the thought process with something better that sounds good to your brain, and your brain will get on board and go, go on, I'll help you with this. So
very nice. Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, you also talk a lot about how to love yourself and your business. Now, that's a really interesting point in itself. So, because if you've perhaps been struggling over the last year or so, because perhaps your business have been affected by what's going on in the real world as we speak now, and you might be suffering severe burnout, you can actually fall out of love with your business, which can end up with the total disaster. But you can actually also fall out of love with yourself, because all the self-doubt comes in again, doesn't it? You start to doubt your ability to run a company and be successful. And I speak to a certain extent from, well, quite a large extent from my own experience years ago from what happened. But what do you mean in that context? How can you love yourself and your business? How can you, if you fall out of love with yourself and your business, how can you reprogram yourself so you get all that back again, get your mojo back?
Yeah, great question. So what does it mean, loving yourself? That was my first challenge, when it's like, I was, hey, love yourself. I thought, do I need to become a hippie or something? Love yourself, man. What did it really mean? Well, of course, love has many shapes and forms. The way I think it's helpful in this context is, what are the personality traits that you like and admire within yourself in both your personal and professional life? They could be things like integrity, honesty, loyalty, all good stuff like that. And then what are you doing that makes you, funny enough, feel stressed, or you're not following up clients, you're not engaged with it, you're fed up with the way you work, you're having challenges with your partners. So, and then you kind of start, oh, well, what's wrong with me? Is it me? Am I just not communicative? Am I being unhelpful? And you start to question your own inner set of personality traits. So the first thing is, recognize the good ones and focus on those first. 2, say, okay, well, all the things I'm kind of not happy with, how do I flip those into being better? And you do that by simply writing out, well, what's a better version of what I'm doing? And then start to tell your brain as often as you can, now, I want you to be like this now, please. Reprogram what's going on in here. The second thing is, surround yourself with great people, and kind of be okay about going, do you know what? No, I'm all right. I'm happy with that. And I'm allowed to be happy with myself. Because it's not just a British trait, but in the UK we're great at stiff upper lip and it's all okay and don't be silly now. Well, no, actually, just look yourself in the mirror and go, you know what? I like you. You do some really great stuff, and focus on what you like yourself. And it's a bit, for me, it was weird and uncomfortable and just very Californian. And no disrespect to any Californians, but I'm standing in the mirror and tell me I like myself. Are you mad? But it works. I just sat there and laughed my socks off. What are you doing? And instantly that just starts to change how we're feeling. We smile, we laugh. Actually, now I'm all right. I am quite good. I am really loyal. I am really passionate. And oh yeah, and I'm just kind of reshaping my energy. And the third part of this is something called imposter syndrome. I don't know if you
talk about it earlier on, 100%.
If I can share something with you, which hopefully, if any of you out there have that thing of, oh God, how did I get here? Am I allowed to be here? Am I any good at what I do? Will I get found out? Am I faking it? You'll be stunned how many other people have this. And I was privileged to do a talk at a room of CEOs of various charities, who were CEOs of the charities, and they had super high power jobs. I'm talking some people earning in excess of £300,000 or £400,000 a year, public figures. One was a former coach for a national rugby side, I won't say which one. And I'm there thinking, these people are, by all our standards, we'd think they were sorted. They were happy. They were the pinnacle of careers. Anyway, I stood up and did my little love mindset piece and talked about imposter syndrome. And of all people, the rugby guy stood up and went, my God, this is me. I have it all the time. I'm sometimes almost sick with worry about what I do. And the whole room of these super successful people all stood up and, thank God you said that. Me too. I don't know why, but I doubt myself all the time. And it was fascinating that it doesn't matter where we are on our career journey. If we allow ourselves to have that little voice saying, you're focusing on what you're not good at, that imposter syndrome wins. How do we overcome it? We flip it. Focus on what you've done. Focus on the reality and remind yourself as often as possible, yeah, you have got this. You are good at it. You do care. And look at all the things you've done. Have a little list of all the achievements that you've done in your career. And all of these things help you start to fall back in love with yourself. And the more you revisit that, this is the other key, keep revisiting it. Every time you're hitting the wall, revisit it again, because we need to refresh. So
that's interesting as well. And I think basically imposter syndrome can be a real blessing, and it also can be a curse, can't it? And it's really interesting because in a sense, sometimes you need to almost go back to go forwards, don't you? And it is the fact that we question ourselves to a degree that helps us to actually become much stronger, better people. But the difficulty is it can also, it very much defines us, doesn't it? So an imposter syndrome can also feed into self-repeating patterns of behavior. And the difficulty is if you can't find ways of escaping out of that loop, then you are perpetually going to struggle in that space. And I think one of the things I've found as well around that too is actually, you mentioned about surrounding yourself with good people. From a business point of view, what I've found really beneficial is we've got an informal advisory board. They're not board members, not shareholders, but they're just people who love and share the passion and mission of what we do, and will act as a confidant or a collective group of people who actually will help me to stay on the straight and narrow, but also helps me to validate some of the plans as well, and keep your feet on the ground. And just actually having that support behind you, I think it's really important. And the nice thing is that we can all do that. They're probably family members can be great, but then quite often they're too close to it. But in a business space, if you can find other people who share common vision and values to yourself, it's amazing how many people will actually want to work with you to help you with your business. And of course, you can help them as well. So it's I think this whole thing around this is a really big part. And you talk a lot about some meaningful goals. What are good ways to create some really meaningful goals or strategies you would recommend around that?
Well, I discovered that I'd been setting goals in the wrong way forever, even though I'd done a couple of goal-setting courses, that they missed a huge point for me. And any of you watching, you may set some goals and you hit some, not others, and you think, well, is it worth it? Can you really hit your goals? And there's all sorts of stories about why goal setting works, but we don't always kind of relate to it. So what I found was some key things that many people, and in fact, I think it's fair to say most, start by setting goals that aren't theirs. So when as we grow up from our parents, schools, peers, we're setting goals that we think are about maybe, achieving a certain career path, or, we're going after money and houses and stuff. Because I was, back to my stress, I was very successful in financial services. I earned over £100,000 for the first time back in 1994. Whoa, go me!
Wow, that's about £1 million in today's money, isn't it? Because of inflation.
More. No, it was a lot of money, but I was stressed beyond belief because I was chasing cars, houses, money, because I was told that would bring me happiness. Those are my goals. I realised it's kind of nice to have financial independence. It's hugely liberating, yes, but actually there were so many other things I wanted to achieve in terms of helping other people, feeling good about myself. So when you set your goals, work out, are they really your goals? Are you pleasing somebody else, or is it for yourself? And it's the time that if you're not really, selfish is the wrong word, but centered on what you need, then you're not going to achieve anything for anybody else. So please, first of all, make sure it's your goal. The second test, and I do this bit like you. I support loads of people and businesses, and we'll do a whole goal setting thing, and they'll tell me what the goal. I say, give me, some of your goals. Oh, I want to do. I want more money. I want more time. I want and they'll reel them all off, and I keep saying anything else, and eventually after this, more money, more time, better this, they'll go, well, do you know what? I've always wanted to be a so-and-so, and their face lights up. Their eye, when they smile, their eyes smile with them, and they become more animated. And we've hit a goal. We've hit the first real goal. It's what I call a head and a heart goal. So if the goals you're going for don't actually have that connection of they really do get you inspired, the chances are the other things weren't the right goals. They were stuff you must get done. That's the difference.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I'm just going to pick out a couple of quick comments from here, and then we'll obviously get down to the next point as well, which would be lovely. And welcome, Charlotte, by the way, for joining us today. And Renato makes a really good point about the law of attraction is another way to understand it. And a big thing. And Charlotte mentions, I think that, let me just, so I can bring us on the screen. Sorry, it won't be a second. Because we're very focused, I can't see what's on the side of the screen. I think it's so important for me, it goes hand in hand with the fact that we're not responsible for and can't make other people change that behavior. All we can be responsible for is what we bring into the situation, how we respond to others. That's actually quite a profound statement, actually, that statement there, isn't it, that Charlotte's just made. Have you got any thoughts about that one?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that is exactly it. One of the most profound things that happened to me, I copied from a motivational speaker called Zig Ziglar.
Yep.
And I was going to do a speech. So I heard this and I tried it and it worked. So very briefly, I was about to go on and do a talk. A friend of mine introduced me to a lady who said, oh, I hate my job. I hate my work. Everyone's awful. Don't want to be there. What can you do about it? And I said, well, I'm about to go and do a talk and I'm not a therapist. It sounds I don't need to check what you need. And she said, no, I just hate everything. Fix me, you can help, you're good at this sort of stuff. I said, well, okay, let's just reflect. Where do you work? Do you like where you work? Is it a nice place, an awful place? What's the environment like? She said, oh, it's a lovely office, it's quite nice, very light and airy. It's got nice plants and I like where I am. Okay, well, that's one thing. What about what you earn? Is it awful? Is it great? She went, oh, I get paid more than most of my friends as it happens. But, I still hate the place and everyone's awful. I said, well, okay, that's two things. I said, what about your holidays? Do you get any holiday at all? She went, oh, yeah, I get a week more than most of my friends as it happens. So I said, hang on a minute. You've just told me everything's awful. You hate it. We've got three things already that you're saying are really good. Do me a favor, write a list of all the things you like about your job and one good thing about the most people you can contact with. Look at it every day before you go to work and ring me or see me next time.
Wow.
2 months went by. It was a networking meeting, like a repeating thing where I've been speaking. And I'll never forget, she was quite a really big, sort of bubbly, dominant lady. She was fabulous. And she came bounding into the meeting. She said, Marcus, I've got to talk to you. I said, yeah, okay, what is it? She said, you won't believe how much everyone at work has changed. And it was just lovely.
Conchita, wow.
Yeah.
That is really powerful, actually, isn't it? And thank you. That's really, really good.
You were
what
right.
we're going to do, so there's a couple of there's a particular question at the end which I'd like to save to the very end. So we'll perhaps in a minute do a little bit of a roundup and come back to that. Have we covered already this whole thing about how to get things done, or have you got some other parts that you feel you'd like to add around that, Marcus?
How to get stuff done. That's the action mindset, and it's probably one of the biggest questions I've got. People ask about the difference between really quite successful people and just people who are kind of doing okay. And it's this concept that somehow there's a magic silver bullet, there's a magic process. And there isn't. There's a whole load of little things that successful people do just about 10% better than everyone else. So in terms of action and time management, you can go on all the courses all day long and learn new skills, and they're useful. But if you haven't changed your mindset first, why are you going to use them? You know now that you should procrastinate less. You know now that you should manage your diary better, probably. You know now that you should have some systems. Why are you not doing it? So the first thing is to say, well, why don't I emulate the people who are successful? Number one is they do the most difficult things first. So when you get into the office, we've all got that client we don't want to call, that file you don't want to handle. And if you leave it sat there, it's going, I'm here, and it drains you all day. Successful people go in and go, right, that's what I'm doing first. The thing that's awful, the thing that really is going to annoy me all day is the number one thing I'll do. So they have a much better day than most of us, because they're not constantly thinking, I haven't done that thing, and it makes you tired and frustrated.
Yeah.
Second is that they don't procrastinate in the many ways that we do. They're not big on social media. They're not faffing about with 20 different things before they do the thing they need to do. So if any of you recognise this, I've got some sales calls to make, maybe they're cold. Right, so I better get all my stuff. I need a glass of water. I need to make sure I've checked all my emails, just check that out of the way. And I wonder if I need to check my social media in case there's something else. And then I'll just do that. And so I'm going to do my sales. I've drunk my water now. I'll go and get another bit of water. None of this. They say, right, here's my sales call time. I start at 10 o'clock and they start at 10 o'clock. They get on it. They're very good at doing the thing they need to do when they need to do it. And the third reason they do it in terms of getting stuff done is create a model week. That is one of the most powerful things you can ever do. Time, time is against us. If anyone wants to know, either seek them out with whoever you work with Rupert, with me. But it is one of the biggest things that will change your life, because your brain will be doing the thing it needs to do when it needs to do it. And it's a game changer. It really is.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful, actually. Thank you very much, Marcus, for that. Now, Marcus, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment or two. And as I've got that lovely question at the end, which I'd love to ask. And all those of you who are joined us today, do interject, do ask some questions in the chat. Or if you've got any comments, please do it. And obviously, we'd love to try and deal with those in just a moment or two. I'm going to do a little bit of a wrap up, then we're going to return to a couple of questions, if that's okay. So just bear me a second so we can just get everything ready. There we go. So these are the points we've been sort of discussing right now. Now, just sort of moving on a little bit from there, what we just to touch on next week, I'm being really horrible today because I'm actually not going to reveal who's the guest speaker for next week. Okay, it's a little bit of a surprise. Okay, so now I'm going to ask a question as well, because normally on the day before Boxing Day, you probably would not expect many people to be around because they'll be traveling to somewhere, going on holiday, going for a long weekend. Of course, we're still in lockdown at the moment, so all these things are going to happen. It'd be really interesting to know in the chat, just tell us what you're doing over Easter. I mean, in fact, whether you're going to be around on Thursday evening next week, actually, or this time on Thursday, because we're really interested to know what people's plans are, whether they're going to get a chance to get away. Just tell us. We'd love to hear it. And next Thursday, there will be a special guest. We'll be going live at 5 to 5 or 5 o'clock as normal. And all details will be revealed. So keep a lookout on your emails and everything else. As those of you who are regulars with us, you will know that we encourage a collaborative mindset. In fact, a number of you are regulars on this call today, and it very much accelerates the relationship of trust. So do always be on the lookout for others and help them out. We do have our spring into 2021 mini conference, and it's broken into two parts. The first part is where we share lots of massive value and insights, and also the second part, for those of you who are joining us, we'll be having a little bit of a workshop session as well, and we'll be really sort of covering these points in terms of your ideal marketing mix and social selling blueprint, your balanced product portfolio, how you can win more business through LinkedIn, and using BizGrowth Time Machine to bring in more continual lead flow of opportunities into your business. There are some other things we're going to be announcing at the mini conference as well. We're introducing another 2 or 3 whole topics around it. If you've attended a number of these before, don't feel you need to re-attend. But if it's the first time you've joined us, then do book in, and we'd love to see you. And if you would like to access any of these good things, if you just go to the homepage of our website, you can book our mini conference from there. It's free of charge. And if you're very challenged for time, you can also instead book in an on-demand webinar, again from the homepage. That lasts just under an hour. And you're very welcome to sign up for these Thursday live streams. Each week we have a different expert speaker. And what you can do as well, rather than having to book each week, you can choose the recurring option. So instead of choosing continue, choose recurring. and you can book sort of 8, 10, 12 weeks ahead, and the system will automatically remind you and give you the relevant link for each week. And if you really want to move your business to the next level from a sales and marketing perspective, you're very welcome also to complete. If you've not completed the sales marketing diagnostic, I'd highly recommend it. It takes 4.5 to 6.5 minutes to complete. And what we'll do is you'll get presented with your results immediately at the end, but also about half an hour later, the system automatically sends you a link with a downloadable PDF, which is like an 8-page report. And obviously, if you want to discuss what that means, you're very welcome to do so. And we'll get back to these questions, a couple of questions in just a moment. But what I would like to do is also share Marcus's details. Obviously, I'm sure we'd all be very grateful for Marcus volunteering his time today. It's really appreciated. And just like all good things, I think those of you who know us well, about 62% of everything we do, or in terms of business referrals, opportunities to network, collaborative relationships, have actually come through LinkedIn. And indeed, I think, Marcus, we met on LinkedIn, and that's how today's conversation came about. And Marcus, his website is the mindsetrevolution.co.uk. Phone number there is 07923 102 332. And obviously, you're very welcome to reach out to Marcus on his email address there. So Marcus, I'm going to return to you now. So bear with me just a second. So Muriel, if you'd like to join us as well, we'd love to see you again. So let's just have a look there. Right. Yeah, so I can't quite understand Renato's comment there, actually. Monday, Thursday, 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Mass, as in presumably Roman Catholic Mass. Get it? Yeah. So you will be doing this. Is it 12 Stations of the Cross? Gosh, should know really. But anyway, is it 12 Stations or 6 Stations of the Cross? Renato, no doubt, it's 10. Oh, it's 10. 10. Is it? There we go. Anyone who knows the answer to that, tell us on the live stream. I'd be really interested to know. Anyway, sort of coming back to a couple of sort of questions. Another point you talk a lot about is about how to radiate confidence in yourself and your clients. Now, this is actually a really important point, isn't it? Because in reality, people buy into other people who are really confident and come across as experts in their space, or authentic, and all these other type of things. So I can see, and it's sort of, if you don't have confidence in yourself, are people likely to buy from you as well? That's the big thing. What are your thoughts around all of that, Marcus?
So the neatly brings us to the last of the 7 key mindsets, which, as you say, is the radiant mindset, because to me, this is somebody mentioned the law of attraction. It's almost when you bring all of the other mindsets together, we've all met people who almost give off that aura of confidence. People that we all know, maybe like President Obama, I think is a classic example of a human being who just radiates, at the top end, the Dalai Lama, for example, but then just in everyday life, maybe not so much over the last 12 months, we all know somebody, we spend time with people who almost we can feel their energy. So I'd ask you all to think, you will all know someone that when you meet them, maybe socially, either in a pub or a club or somewhere that you meet locally, and you almost dread seeing them. You think, oh no, so-and-so is there, because every time you have a conversation with them, they drain your energy. They're mood hoovers or energy vampires. And it's an almost physical, tangible thing. And conversely, you'll probably all be able to think of somebody who you think, oh, whenever I spend time with so-and-so, I just feel that bit better. I feel G'd up, I feel buoyant, I feel energized. And this is almost a physical thing that once you become really confident in who you are and reassess, do the retraining of your brain, and you start to almost give off this aura, this almost tangible energy, and it sits with the whole know, like, and trust process. We all do business with people that the better we know, like, and trust them, the more likely we are to do business. Well, it starts with you. Do you know, like, and trust yourself? Hence the whole journey. And the more you do, the more you'll kind of go, yeah, I'm really good at what I do. I'm confident in what I do. I want to help you solve your problems in a way that really works for you. And that starts to come up, and you literally radiate this feeling of something that other people feel good about. So it's that simple. Work on everything else first, and the way you stand up and walk into a room, the way you communicate, the way you smile more often. It's about attitude as well. So many people I see in business meetings that, yeah, okay, yeah, as if they can't be bothered to be there. Well, am I going to interact with you? So yeah, it's just almost literally, you can feel yourself giving off the energy when you're in the zone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so powerful, actually. And this whole thing around confidence, it becomes infectious, doesn't it, at the end of the day? And as a matter of interest, Marcus, you probably follow some really interesting people. Who do you tend to follow to get your energy? Give us a few examples of some names you follow, or perhaps some books you've read which you've really engaged with. It really inspire you, or people really inspire you.
Yeah, it's some fairly obvious. I did the whole Tony Robbins thing, who's a motivational speaker, who some people like, some people don't. Zig Ziglar, who's a guy from years ago. So this was in the early days that started to change a bit. A guy called Jack Black, not the actor, a Scottish motivational speaker. And I've read so many books, some of which confuse me, some of which help me. An interesting one I read recently is The Power of Now, which is more around spirituality and Buddhism. And I think when you choose the books that really make you think differently, the first motivational book I ever read was sorry, somebody's waving at me, Who Moved My Cheese? So it was a really short little book, and it's about change and how we view things. So other people that motivate me are people who achieve. I read and follow people who are beacons of how I think I would like to be, as opposed to, So I mentioned Obama, Muhammad Ali. I've read so much of his stuff. What a fascinating guy. In terms of his story, he used a thing called future history, which I found incredible. So yeah, if anyone messages me, I'll do a follow up, and I'll put a list of a few.
Very nice. Yeah, as a matter of interest, have you tried fire walking?
No, I teach fire breathing.
Fire breathing?
Yes.
I'm going to have to ask you about that now, aren't I?
Yes, I teach fire breathing, not as part of the business, because I can't get insurance for that. But I think the fire walking thing's great. It's a
Tony Robbins thing, isn't it? So
it's a Tony Robbins thing. I sometimes think, how will that work on a wet Wednesday afternoon when the kids won't get ready? So I try and follow more practical stuff. But just as you mentioned it, my passion, my other passion apart from personal development, is I'm a musician, and I still gig now, have done pretty much all my life. Many years ago, when we were doing it regularly, we dressed up for one Halloween as like sort of Halloween-y characters and voodoo character, and everyone loved the look, so we carried on doing it. And I used to walk on stage with a flaming torch. I got bored one day and thought, if only I could breathe fire. So I reached out to my brother, who I didn't know could teach fire breathing. He taught me, and without telling the band, next time we went on stage, I breathed fire.
Wow.
And I do it in talks now. I've actually done it in professional situations in London, where I end the talk with a little bit of fire breathing. So I often say, I can breathe fire into your business, both figuratively and literally. So there you go.
I love that real energy and that passion. And I'm going to ask you a point here. If you got something you'd like to go in with here, I know also Renato's given us an answer here, hasn't he, in terms of the 14 days of the cross. Yeah, so actually takes me back, because of course I did go to a Roman Catholic boarding school. So, and actually one of the things, interesting enough, I did find that experience actually quite an emotional time when I was certainly a kid. Actually, it was a bit of an anchor I hang on to. So, and interesting enough, I don't want to get into this whole subject of religion, because it's a very, you're always going up by risking offending someone. But one of the, interesting enough, if you were to read the Bible and things like that, some of the parts go back to the time where even Jesus, who at the end of the day is the Son of God, he had his days where, was it 40 days into the wilderness he'd go as a period of reflection, and then come back and then enthused be to actually serve the people, as it were. Now, if I apologise, Renato, if we've got that wrong, but I think actually, if God can't get it right, not get it right, I'm going to get strapped down by lightning now, probably. But I think it's hope for us all. At the end of the day, it's all natural to have self-doubt and everything else, and inspiring ourselves with energy and creating energy around us and also with other people is a really positive thing. So Nikki tells us she's going to be playing the piano. Lovely, brilliant. Yeah, so that's really good. So Marcus, I think a very big, what I'd like to say, a very big thank you for today. Really been inspiring. Muriel, I didn't give you a chance to answer. Sorry.
You didn't. No, I really relate to you, Marcus. I'm a very positive person, and I do use some of your techniques actually, and they actually work. And they infuriate other people because they expect you to go in blazing. But I'm just very calm. It winds them up more, but yeah, it really does work.
Yeah, and I can vouch that Muriel is very calm, and you need to be when you're dealing with me.
Most of the time.
Marcus, thank you very much indeed, and obviously stay on for a moment too. But very grateful for the contribution, and also thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next Thursday. And we will be here, and we will look forward to celebrating Easter as well as that comes up as well. So, okay, everyone, thank you very much to Marcus. See you in a moment, and take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.